Next up, I'm joined by Roni Minter. She is a co-founder and CEO of Sisters Healing Old Wounds, or SHOW. Roni, welcome to the Hudson Mohawk Magazine.
Thank you for having me.
Can you just start off by talking about SHOW and the goals of your organization?
Sisters Healing Old Wounds show. We started out in 2011. We became incorporated. However, show was birthed while I was incarcerated at Albion Correctional Facility. I started a small support group for women, and through Rules Opportunities, which was a program there where we were peer educators for HIV and AIDS. And during that time, we thought about the women not having a safe place to talk about past traumas, child molestation, rape, domestic violence, child abuse. So this was a safe place for the women to be able to come and talk. But in 2011, I wanted to start something that would address the needs for incarcerated and formerly incarcerated women. And I asked if I could have the name Sisters Healing Old Wounds back, because I was the one who created it. And so they said yes. And that's how we started. And basically, what we try to do is create a space where we can address policies and procedures that impact incarcerated and formerly incarcerated women throughout the state of New York.
Can you just give a couple examples of how some of that work plays out?
Okay, so one of the things that we were proud to do was we have what's called a training for staff members of various community-based organizations throughout the state, and the training is called the Forgotten Population, and it's an 8-hour training. And what we do is we bring together individuals who work in various programs throughout the state, or we also had some state workers attend. And we talk to them about the needs of the women, how it's a lot different from the needs of the men. And oftentimes what happens is male programs are already in place, and they simply try to put a skirt on it and say, now this is a female program, when we definitely have unique needs other than our male counterparts. So it's definitely an impactful program. We've seen organizations change some of their intake policy questions on their intake and different things like that. Like, for example, there's post-traumatic incarceration syndrome. That's a real thing. And a lot of the questions that were on intake packets didn't address the pseudo family units that women engage in while they're incarcerated, like they have a mother, a father, uncles, cousins, brothers, sisters, and they didn't talk about the loss of family. Some women have been, incarcerated 8, 9, 10 years. They've established family units, and even though they're coming home, even though they're coming to, some semblance of freedom, they've left people that they've grown very close to in a family unit type of thing. And, people don't address these traumas that the women have leaving behind loved ones.
Thank you for going into that some. Now, Roni, you are involved. Sisters Healing Old Wounds is involved in this candlelight vigil for clemency that's taking place on January 3rd in the Capital Region. Can you talk about how this candlelight vigil for clemency is important to you, and why SHOW is involved in this event?
Yes, I can. Okay, so it started out. It's going to be like there's a lot of layers to my answer. It started out because one of the women who was incarcerated in Bedford, her name was Val Gaynor, and she passed away. But she was, at the time of her death, she was the longest serving woman, one of the women who was served the longest time in Bedford Hills Correctional Facility. And I knew Val. I met her in 1990. Speaking of those family units, I called her Auntie Val. And so that relationship even filtered out into the world. Now, I wasn't in constant contact with Valerie Gaynor when I came home, but every now and then, maybe like the last time it had been 3 years ago, I would send her a little candy package around Christmas time or something like that. However, once she passed, I started thinking about all the women who have been afforded clemency, or all the women who have people advocating for them, and they all were white women. And no disrespect to our white sisters, but we had Judy Clark. They advocated very hard for her, and she was released. Then you have Pamela Smart. They're always doing some kind of advocacy around Pamela Smart. I remember back when Jean Harris was in Bedford, and they did advocacy around Jean Harris. But I've never heard of a real advocacy, a real movement for black or brown women. So I started questioning that and being very vocal about it in the various social networking sites that formerly incarcerated women have. And, start asking, like, who's going to start looking out for our other sisters of color? And so when Val passed away, I started thinking about Kim Brown, who I met in 2000 when I was in Bedford. And so I started asking questions about Kim Brown. She's been in Bedford since 1995, I believe. And when I reached out to Kim, she communicated to me that her clemency paperwork has been on the governor's desk for about 4 years. She received 2 letters from the governor's office stating that they received her paperwork, but that's it. I can't find out if her paperwork has been submitted to the National Criminal Defense Lawyers Association. She hasn't been assigned an attorney to assist with her clemency, so we're working on trying to get someone to acknowledge that, 1, her clemency is in, 2, find out if her name is in this database, and 3, get her assigned an attorney. But it's ridiculous that she's had this clemency in for 4 years and nothing other than 2 letters stating that they haven't.
And so in these people's name, both Kim Brown and in the late Valerie Gator's name, you will be showing up at the clemency vigil.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Can you, as I understand, Valerie Gator spent nearly 40 years in prison and was the oldest or the longest serving female prisoner. Is that correct?
Yes.
And so when you're close to these stories, you knew her. What is it about clemency itself that's important as part of the whole sort of prison reform package that we're sort of talking about these days?
So, listen, people come into the system for doing various crimes, right? And I believe wholeheartedly that after serving 15, 20 years of your life behind bars, that you're no longer the same person you were when you walked in, right? There has to be some kind of transformation. Whether good or bad, you're not the same person. But I can say that Valerie Gaynor was definitely someone who everyone looked up to. They sound advice and encouragement about staying out of prison. She worked the puppy program, helping the CNI dogs, and she did various things. She was a pillar, so to speak, in that community, right? But then you have someone like Kim Brown, who worked in the law library for years. She is very involved in the church in Bedford. She's definitely a pillar in that community right now, and she's someone who other people can look to for encouragement, support, or words of how do I get through this or something like that. And Kim, not only that, Kim has been such an example in the facility that if she's given an opportunity to be released, she has employment set up already with the law firm. And she's already going to be working with the ministry, and she's going to be working with an author. So she has different things already set up for her if she's given an opportunity to be released. I wholeheartedly believe that Governor Cuomo has the ability to look at who a person is today. What have they done since being incarcerated, what does it look like for them in the future? Is Kim someone who would repeat, her crime? And absolutely she will not. She is not. To me, she's a perfect candidate for clemency, or I wouldn't be working with her, to be quite honest. If I didn't 110% believe that Kim is not the person she was when she came into Bedford in 1995, I also believe that her crime was one of a isolated incident. And then further, I believe that she would be an asset to the community upon her release.
Now, you've started a Move On campaign for Kim Brown. If people want to find out more about this specific clemency case, how could they find out more?
Right. There's you can look under my name, Roni Minter, RoniMinter, or hashtag Free Kim Brown, and you'll see the petition there. We definitely need signatures. It gives a little synopsis about Kim, what she's doing, what she's achieved since she's been incarcerated, and just the hopes that we can get her name out there to some of the senators and assembly persons and to Governor Cuomo. It may be too late for her to get clemency this year, but we're hopeful about next year.
Great. Roni Minter, is there anything else that you would like to say today about clemency on the Hudson Mohawk Magazine?
I just think that, people deserve a second chance. And Governor Cuomo, some of his platform was around clemency. And the fact that he's only given very few clemencies since he's been in office is pretty disheartening. And it doesn't look hopeful that he'll change, the way he's been doing clemencies this year. It's just disheartening, especially when you know that someone's had their paperwork on his desk in his office for 4 years. And let me just add this to that. When Kim did her clemency application, she exhausted all of her funds that she had in her account to get that document prepared and ready and mailed out, to the point that she sent her only copy. She didn't have enough money left to copy the document that she created. The only copy of her clemency is sitting in the governor's office. That speaks volumes to the fact that men and women who really want their freedom will give their last, to the point where that's like, listen, this is a wing and a prayer. I'm sending my hopes, my dreams, my future in this packet to the governor, and it's just been sitting there for 4 years.
Roni Minter, thank you for joining us today on the Hudson Mohawk Magazine.
Thank you for having me. Thank you so much.